Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Beluga Whale and welcome to my in-depth jungle Lee Sin guide. On every single patch since his release, Lee has been a prominent pick in the jungle. You're probably wondering how a champion can be so dominant through every meta change, and I'm here with the answers. In this video I'll show you the tips, tricks, and playstyle that makes Lee the undisputed king of the jungle, and how you can use him to dominate your opponents. If you only want to see a specific part of Lee Sin, there are timestamps in the description below. Please remember to leave a like if this video helps you and check out my other videos for more jungle content. As for an overall champion rating, I would give Lee Sin a 9 out of 10. Lee is a near perfect jungler in my opinion, and he always has been. However, he has his ups and downs that prevent him from being a 10 out of 10. The pros of Lee include incredible sustain with his W, which grants him lifesteal, and his resource bar is energy, not mana, so he can't run out. He has great ganking tools, whether it be his 2-gap closers or a strong CC on his ultimate. Finally, Lee Sin wins nearly every 1v1 that could happen with an enemy jungler, with very few exceptions, so he is very risky for opponents to invade to try to shut him down. The cons of Lee include a weak scaling into the late game. Once late game arrives, Lee becomes a CC machine rather than the powerhouse he is early game. Due to both of these, Lee is incredibly reliant on early game ganks in order to win games, and if you aren't able to find any, you'll fall behind and hinder your team. Finally, Lee's kit does not work well unless he builds a significant amount of damage, and building damage gives the enemy team a higher chance of killing you. Here we are on the wiki to take a closer look at Lee Sin and his abilities. I'll also be inserting short clips of his abilities that I think need further explanation rather than just reading off the wiki, but that's going to be recorded after I record this. So anyways, Lee Sin's primary role is a fighter and his secondary role is an assassin, as listed here, and I kind of agree with that. Lee Sin's definitely a fighter, and there are times where you can be an assassin on Lee Sin, but you should never play Lee Sin with the intent of being an assassin. And what I mean by that is, if you get fed early, which if you're playing Lee Sin right, you probably will, then yes, you're going to be able to 1v1 the enemy AD carry and assassinate them pretty easily. However, with that being said, once late game comes around, or mid game where you start team fighting with your team, your role is not to jump onto the enemy AD carry and try to assassinate them in team fights. Once Lee Sin gets to team fights, he's more of a team fight setter-upper, I guess you could call it. Basically, you're going to use your ult to either catch out any enemy or knock up a few enemies and start a team fight. So I don't really agree with his secondary role being an assassin, but honestly there's not a role that could fit there perfectly either. Another thing to note is that Lee Sin's secondary bar is energy. What energy is, if you don't know, is its resource system kind of like mana, but the differences are that energy regens very quickly and you're never going to run out while you're out in the jungle. However, energy also is capped at 200. No matter what your level is, your energy pool will always be 200. And then if you use all of your abilities too quickly without managing your energy properly, then you can run out of energy, and that can really mess you up in a team fight. Overall, energy is a lot more useful if you're a jungler, but then once team fights come around, mana could probably be seen as a little bit more useful. However, as long as you're managing your energy properly, which we'll talk about of course, then it shouldn't really be a problem of you running out. Now let's go ahead and hop onto his passive. His passive is called Flurry. After using an ability, Lee Sin's next 2 basic attacks within 3 seconds gain 40% attack speed, returning 20 energy on the first attack and 10 energy on the second. Now this is Lee Sin's tool to make sure that he manages his mana properly. This also helps Lee Sin clear the jungle very quickly. But before we talk about that, we'll talk about how to manage your energy with it. It does say Lee Sin's next 2 basic attacks, so basically, if you want your energy to always be near full, what you can do is use a spell, auto attack twice, use a spell, auto attack twice, use a spell. And if you keep up that trend, then while you're going to get 30 energy back from your passive, you're also regenerating 50 every 5 seconds, so 10 energy a second. So as long as you keep doing this and you space out your auto attacks and abilities, you'll pretty much always be full energy on Lee Sin in the jungle. The first upside to that is that your energy will always be full, and then if you get invaded or you get into a fight that you weren't planning to get into, you won't be too messed up because you'll have full energy. The other upside to this passive is that his next two basic attacks do gain 40% attack speed, and if you use the spells and abilities, like I said, then all of your auto attacks are going to have 40% increased attack speed. And if that's the case, that just means you're going to be clearing the jungle a lot quicker than you would if you wasted your passive and most of your auto attacks didn't have bonus attack speed. So basically the plus sides are very increased jungle speed, and also you'll always be ready to fight as long as you use this properly. Okay, here I am in game to show you how to use Lee Sin's passive correctly. So as I already said, all you want to do is use a spell. Here I'm going to use Safeguard on myself, and I'm auto attack twice. Then I'm going to use Iron Will, auto attack twice. Sonic Wave, auto attack twice. Resonating Strike, auto attack twice. Then you just do it again. One thing you should know about Lee Sin's passive is that it does not proc on summoner spells. It's only on Lee Sin's own spells. So for example, Smite doesn't proc your passive, as you can see there, and neither would Flash. Next up, we have his Q, Sonic Wave / Resonating Strike. All of Lee Sin's abilities, other than his ult, have two different parts. So their name is literally Sonic Wave / Resonating Strike, or Safeguard / Iron Will. And we'll just talk about them when we get to them. First off, Lee Sin's first part of his Q is called Sonic Wave. It's an active. Lee Sin fires a Sonic Blast in the target direction, dealing physical damage to the first enemy it hits and granting true sight of them for 3 seconds. If Sonic Wave hits, Lee Sin can then cast Resonating Strike within the next 3 seconds. So, granting true sight, if you don't know what true sight is, basically it reveals stealth targets. So Shaco, Twitch, Evelynn, Wukong, any of those guys that can stealth, if Lee Sin hits them with their Q, you'll be able to see them. The skill shot has a range of 1100, which is pretty standard for skill shots. It's pretty relatable to Ezreal's Q. I think Lee Sin's Q is actually a little bit longer than Ezreal's Q, but overall, if you're familiar with that, that's something you can think of. The missile speed is 1750. 1750 is pretty fast for missile speed. I think it's above average. And what this means is that the Q travels faster than most projectiles do. And what that means to you is that as long as you aim it properly, it's going to be very hard for your enemies to dodge it since it travels so quickly. The initial cost is 50 energy, and the cooldown goes down as you max it. If you've noticed, Resonating Strike only has a 30 energy cost, and all of Lee Sin's abilities actually work the same way, where the first one is 50 energy and the second is 30 energy. And really that's just so that even if this was 50 energy, if you used your passive properly, you would still always be fine on energy. However, when you're in a fight with a champion, you're not always going to be able to use your passive properly. So that's why the secondary cast costs 30 energy rather than 50. As for the damage that Sonic Wave does, the base amount is pretty good, but it's not absurd. 170 at rank 5 is nothing unheard of, but the real special thing about Lee Sin is that most of his abilities scale with this plus 90% of your bonus AD. And this scaling is what makes it so important that you play, or that you build AD on Lee Sin. If you're not taking advantage of this 90% bonus AD scaling, then Lee Sin's actually a pretty weak champion compared to others. And all he is at that point is some decent CC, and if you wanted that, you could have played a tank and then made better use of your skill set. So that's why it's so important that Lee Sin builds AD. This is a double-edged sword, I guess you could call it. On the one hand, since you're doing so much damage, that's what makes Lee Sin so hard to fight for enemy champions. But then on the other hand, since you need to build damage, the enemies are going to be able to kill you quicker. So take it how you want it. We'll move on to Resonating Strike. This is the second part of his Q. It has a range of 1300. This range is a little bit bigger than Sonic Wave, if you noticed, and that's just so if you're chasing an enemy and you hit your Q on them, but they're running away, then you're still going to be able to cast Resonating Strike. It's not like as soon as you hit your Q, then if they take one step, you're not going to be able to cast the second part of your Q, right? The cost is 30 energy, as already mentioned, and it's an active. Lee Sin dashes to the enemy marked by Sonic Wave, dealing physical damage which is capped at 400 against minions and monsters. So, this is one of Lee Sin's gap closers, and it's really good for ganking because you are going to dash to the enemy, and then once you've dashed in, if you have a red buff, you can use it. You can hit your E, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Everything like that. The reason that Lee Sin's damage is capped at 400 against minions and monsters is because this is actually an execute. It doesn't say it here, but it does say it here, if you noticed. So what an execute is you do more damage based on your opponent's missing life, right? Lee Sin scales with 8% of the target's missing health, which is a fairly high number. It's not so high that it's absolutely broken, but since this does have such a high AD scaling, and it's an execute, that means if Lee Sin gets fed, he's going to start being able to kill people very quickly. It's capped at 400 against minions and monsters. This is just so that when you're doing a Baron as Lee Sin, you can't just execute it for 2000 damage once it's low or something with your Q. However, it is still very useful for doing Baron and Dragon, and that's because I can guarantee that when Dragon and Baron are low health, you'll hit this 400 cap. So that makes it very easy to hit a Smite on Baron and Dragon as Lee Sin, because you know how much damage Smite does. It tells you, and it does true damage. And then you know that your Q is going to do 400 damage when you land. So you can just add that 400 to your Smite damage, and then you get a pretty easy secure on any buff. And yeah, that's about it. This is Lee Sin's bread and butter. If you know what that means, it's just Lee Sin's main tool. This is what we max first on Lee Sin every game, no exceptions. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to say about it right now. We'll be moving on to Lee Sin's W, which is called Safeguard / Iron Will. It has a range of 700, so it's a little bit less than Lee Sin's Q, but it is still more than most champions' auto attack range, so that's a good place to place it. The cost is 50 energy, and the cooldown is 14 seconds. The cooldown doesn't actually change if you max it. However, we'll read the active right now. It is an active. Lee Sin dashes to the target ally or friendly ward. If the ally is a champion, they and Lee Sin receive a shield that lasts 2 seconds, and Safeguard's cooldown is halved. Lee Sin can activate Safeguard on himself to receive the shield and can cast Iron Will within 3 seconds. So, it is actually halved. The cooldown goes down to 7 seconds if you hit a champion with it, and that's very useful. The shield is not an absurd amount of strength. When you do level it up, 200 is a pretty significant amount. The shield actually can out-damage or out-shield Ignite once you hit max rank. We do actually max Lee Sin's W second, so you'll be hitting rank 5 of this at level 13. And then while you're at level 13, this shield will actually be a very good defense against Ignites. So that's part of the reason that we max his shield second, is because the shield is strong enough to defend against Ignites. And I've saved tons of people in my games just by coming in and safeguarding them at the last second. And then since I was maxing my safeguard, the shield's actually significant enough to save them from some damage. The other reason that we max this is because of Iron Will. An Iron Will, it costs 30 energy. It's an active, but it's only on Lee Sin. For 4 seconds, Lee Sin gains bonus lifesteal and spell vamp. This lifesteal and spell vamp is what makes Lee Sin so great at sustaining out in the jungle, alongside the fact that he has energy. He also gets free lifesteal and spell vamp from his kit. And the most important part of this is obviously the lifesteal, because lifesteal is what applies on auto attacks, and Lee Sin's an AD champion, and as we talked about with your passive, you're going to be auto attacking a lot. However, the spell vamp is actually very important on Lee Sin too. There's a couple of reasons why the spell vamp is so important. The first reason is that you do have an execute on your Q. And if you have your spell vamp activated when you use the second part of your Q and it's an execute, that can actually significantly heal you. And it will help you clear jungle camps if you're really low and you just need some HP. The other reason that spell vamp is so good is because not only do you benefit with Lee Sin spells, but Smite actually counts towards spell vamp. And you do, of course, take Smite in the jungle with Lee Sin. So, one thing that you need to be doing when you're playing Lee Sin and you know that you're going to smite a camp is that you want your Iron Will to be activated before you smite every single time. And then this is just going to grant you a little bit more health. It might only be 50 or 60, but as you should know, any amount of health makes a huge difference when you're jungling. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. Every time that you smite, you want to make sure that Iron Will is activated. Back to why we max this second, the bonus sustain actually increases as you max it, which is really, really strong even at the third rank. This is just going to give you 15% bonus lifesteal, but once you get a couple of points into W, pretty much the third rank, you will have some of the best sustain that any jungler has in the game, and then you can start abusing it and only back when you need to. And that's a really powerful tool that not a lot of junglers get to make use of. Most junglers will have to back when they're low health, and then they just kind of buy what they can. But Lee Sin has the option to back whenever he wants because of the strong sustain from his W, and then that means you have more time to gank, and you only need to back when you can buy important items, and that way you're not wasting any time recalling just to get health, and then you have to walk back out, clear some. If you didn't get a gank off, you gotta back again. All that stuff Lee Sin never has to deal with because of his super high sustain. So yeah, it's because of the sustain and saving allies that we max Safeguard's second on Lee Sin. Now, moving on to his E. His E is what some people argue you should max second on Lee Sin. However, his E also used to be a lot stronger quite a while back, maybe season 2 or 3, and then they nerfed it. But back when it was really strong, then it was pretty debatable whether to max W or E second, but now I think hands down W is the better one, and you should never max his E second. His E is called Tempest / Cripple. The first ability, Tempest, has a range of 350, but it does fire in a circle around Lee Sin, and 350 is a little bit more than your auto attack range. Lee Sin's auto attack range is 125, like most melee champions. Tempest is going to be able to hit a little bit further than your auto attack range in a circle around you. The initial cost is 50 energy, of course, and the cooldown is 10 seconds no matter what rank it is. It isn't active. Lee Sin smashes the ground, dealing magic damage to nearby enemies and granting true sight of them for 4 seconds. If Tempest hits an enemy, Lee Sin can then cast Cripple within the next 3 seconds. So once again, we have this True Sight on one of Lee Sin's abilities. True Sight, as I already said, just reveals stealth champions. This is why Lee Sin is such a good pick into Shaco or Rengar if they're trying to run Pat Stew to get to your AD carry, or even if they're trying to get the jump on you. If you have an idea that they're there, you can just press your E, and then in a small AoE around you, it'll reveal all enemies, which will of course include either one of them if they're running past you. Another thing to note about Tempest is that it deals magic damage. It's the only spell that Lee Sin has that does deal magic damage, and this is part of the argument as to why you should max it second, not W. The thing about it doing magic damage is that if your enemies build armor to resist you, as they probably will since Lee Sin's an AD champion, if they're building armor, then Tempest is going to cut right through that since it deals magic damage. However, with the warrior enchantment granting you armor penetration, I never really think that armor is that big a deal early, and there's no reason to get Tempest over his W just because of that. The scaling on it is a little bit more than his Q. It's 100% of your bonus AD rather than 90. It has to have this bonus AD scaling basically since most people max it third. This bonus AD scaling is going to mean that it doesn't become a very weak spell when you're not maxing it. Sure, it's still going to be, say, 140 damage weaker if it's still at 60 instead of 200 base. But you're going to be building AD on Lee Sin, so the bonus AD is going to help this still be a relevant spell. If Tempest hits, you can cast Cripple within the next 3 seconds. Cripple has a slight longer range than Tempest for the exact same reason that Resonating Strike has a longer range than Sonic Wave. The cost is 30 energy, of course, and it's an active. Lee Sin slows all enemies within range that are marked by Tempest for 4 seconds, and it decays over the duration. Another argument for maxing E second is that the slow increases as you rank it, and that's having a 60% slow at level 13 would be very strong. However, you'd be sacrificing so much sustain that you wouldn't be able to abuse this slow that much because you'd have to keep backing since you weren't full health. So once again, I'm just trying to really drive in the point that E should always be maxed third. It does slow. At first rank, 20% isn't a terrible slow. That's the same amount of slow that Chilling Smite can grant you. And basically, the best way to use Cripple is if you're fighting someone and they're trying to juke your Q and you know that they're going to juke it, then you can just run up to them. If they keep juking around, then you're obviously going to catch them because they're not running straight away from you. And then once you get in range, you can use Tempest and Cripple, and then once they're slowed, it's a lot easier to hit your Q and you can begin to combo them. So yeah, it's also important to note that this is an AoE spell and it helps you jungle a lot, and it does a significant amount of damage. However, you almost never need to use Cripple in the jungle. That's another thing to note. The only time that you would be needing to use Cripple in the jungle is if you want to get Lee Sin's passive, and honestly, if you use his spells correctly, then you'll never have to use Cripple for the passive, because you can balance out between Sonic Wave, Resonating Strike, Safeguard, Iron Will, and Tempest. Those 5 alone, when you use them together properly, you'll never actually have to use Cripple. Not that it's going to necessarily hurt you if you use Cripple, but that's just a point I want to make. You don't ever really have to use it. Now, finally, we'll move on to Lee Sin's ult. His ult is called Dragon's Rage. It has an initial range of 375, which is a little bit more than Tempest, but it knocks the enemy back that you use it on by 1200 units. The cooldown goes down as you rank it, and the physical damage is insane on Lee Sin's Q. It has a base of 600 at max rank, plus 200% of your bonus AD. This is pretty much the reason they want to call Lee Sin an assassin. His Q alongside his ult can do quite a lot of damage if you have enough bonus AD, because this is 200% of your bonus AD, so it's twice as hard scaling as Tempest, and it's even more than twice as hard as his Q. But we'll read the active. Lee Sin roundhouse kicks the target enemy champion, dealing physical damage and knocking them back over 1 second. Enemies the target collides with take the same damage plus bonus physical damage and are knocked up for 1 second. So the bonus physical damage that an enemy might take is from the target that you ult's maximum HP. This is important because some people might not want to use Lee Sin's ult on a tank and think it's a waste, but it's definitely not a waste as long as you hit other enemies with the tank. So if you ult a tank into the back line, and that's one of the ways you'll be wanting to use Lee Sin's ult a lot. If you ult a tank into his enemy team, they're going to take the full damage of your ult, all of this, plus a percentage of the target that you ulted's health as damage. Lee Sin's ult is his playmaking tool. It's probably the hardest thing to use correctly because a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on how you should use it and all that. I will be showing a clip after this that shows you how to Insec or other ways that you can use your ult. So you'll see that in probably like 10 seconds. And then after that, we're going to move on to runes, masteries, and item sets. So I hope this was a good breakdown of his abilities. Of course, if you guys have any questions, you're always free to leave comments about those. And yeah, I'll be rolling the clip now. Okay, here I am at level 6 to showcase how you Insec onto a target. If you don't know what the Insec is, basically it's what most Lee Sins try to do in order to displace an enemy teammate. An enemy teammate. So how you do it is you're going to Q to your target, you're going to hit your initial Q, and then use your second part of your Q. As you land onto your target, you want to place a ward behind them. That ward can be either from your Sightstone or your Trinket ward, it doesn't matter. As soon as the ward lands, you're going to use your W to dash to it, and then once you've landed with your W, you're going to ult the target back. So I'm going to do it to Mundo real quick, but I'm not going to be able to talk through it while I do it because it's going to happen pretty fast. So here we go. If he had revealed, there we go. And that's it. Okay, the next thing I want to showcase about Lee Sin's ult is called the ult flash. And this is actually different than flash ulting. And it's actually something that probably not a lot of Lee Sin players know, but a very powerful tool at Lee Sin's disposal. So basically, the thing about Lee Sin's ult is that as soon as he casts it, it's going to go off. No matter if Lee Sin gets moved or CC'd, or I've even gotten eaten by a Tahm Kench, and it'll still go off. Now, the thing about that is that Lee Sin can be moved while he begins his ult. And what that means is that if you start your ult and you flash immediately, then your ult will still go off after you flash. And what this means for you as a Lee Sin player is that you're going to be able to ult your target and then flash behind them. And once you do that, they're going to get sent back to your team. Kind of like an Insec, it just works a little bit differently. Now, the reason that you would want to do this is because, like I said, once Lee Sin's ult starts, it doesn't stop until it's finished. So there's no way that your target can respond to this. Another thing is that they are locked into place when you start your ult on them because it counts as the animation. So while Lee Sin can be moved around, and the opponent could be moved around too, they can't move on their own will, basically is what I'm trying to say. Because as soon as Lee Sin's ult starts, they're already in a knockback animation. So all you do, like I said, is you start your ult, and then before you actually kick them, you want to flash behind the enemy. And if you do it right, it's going to send them behind you. So I'm going to do it to Mundo real quick, and once again, I'm not going to be able to talk about it when I do it because it's going to happen so quickly. And that's all you do. You ult and then flash behind them. And the benefits of it over Insec is that it happens instantly and the opponent can't do anything about it. With the Insec, if they're quick enough, they'll just flash away from you when you try to ward hop behind them. So those are the two ways, the best ways to use Lee Sin's ult. Another thing is you can of course Insec with your flash if you'd rather do that than ward hop. And while that's a lot easier to do, it's probably honestly twice as easy. You're wasting your flash when you don't have to use it, and there's also a more powerful way for you to use your flash and your ultimate. Okay, the last thing I want to touch on about Lee Sin's ultimate is that it's a lot of people want to Q before you ultimate and then ult and Q afterwards, which is fine. You know, people would like to do that because the second part of Lee Sin's Q is an execute. So if you get off your ult before you use it, then you're going to be doing more damage. However, there is another way that you can use his ult with his Q, and it makes his Q a lot easier to hit. If I can get Mundo to leave me alone for a second. So what you're going to be doing, or just another way to think about it, and I want to make sure you guys know this, is that you can ult first. And since you're ulting them, the target's going to be knocked back. And as we know, they can't do anything during that knockback. They're going to be knocked back. So, while they're being knocked back, that makes it very easy to hit your Q on them after you've ulted them. And you're still going to get the full execute damage that you would have gotten before since you've already used your ult. And it's just a really reliable way to use your Q, and you should really think about doing this when you're in a fight against an opponent. So I'm going to show it, but it's really not that big a deal. You're going to ult them, and then while they're being knocked back, it makes it really easy to hit your Q on them. And that's it. We'll talk more about Lee Sin's ult, of course, once we get to the gameplay, I'm sure. But that's all I wanted to show at this point. So now we'll be moving on to Lee Sin's runes and masteries. And one good thing about Lee Sin is that his runes and masteries are very simple, and you don't have to do anything special with them to make them effective. Here I have the rune page that I use in 90% of my Lee Sin games. It's just my standard AD page. All you do is take attack damage reds, attack damage quintessences, armor yellows, and then magic resist blues. You want attack damage reds and quintessences because of course your abilities have such a high bonus AD scaling that you want to get AD wherever you can. On a lot of junglers, you wouldn't want to sacrifice the attack speed that you could possibly get from your rune page for AD. However, with Lee Sin's passive and also with how good he is with attack damage, there's really no reason to not take attack damage on your reds and quints. If you don't have attack damage reds and quints, you could take attack speed in their place or maybe armor penetration, but none of that stuff is needed on Lee Sin and it's not nearly as useful. So I definitely recommend taking these reds and quints. We take armor yellows because of course if you don't take armor yellows on your jungler, in almost all cases that means that you're going to get killed by the jungle creeps. Lee Sin can jungle without armor yellows. However, if you want to be able to gank whenever you want, then you need to take armor yellows. Otherwise, you're just going to get really low in the jungle and you're going to have to back a lot. Finally, I take magic resist blues in most of my games. This is just because there's no other thing that you need more than magic resist here. If the opponent team has one or two mages, then you definitely want magic resist here. However, if you are versus a full AD team, which does happen sometimes in solo queue, and you have a lot of rune pages to spare, you might want to take this rune page. And this rune page is the exact same as the first rune page. I just traded out all my magic resist blues for CDR blues. And Lee Sin's a very ability based champion, so if you can take the CDR here, it does improve your early game strength a lot. However, 9 games out of 10, they're going to have at least one magic damage source. And if they do, then you need to have this rune page. Now, we'll move on to masteries. I take 21-9 on Lee Sin. You could take 9-21 if you really wanted to, but if you were going to do that, you might be wanting to go Cinderhulk Lee Sin or something. And of course, we'll talk about this when we get to item sets, but as far as my guide goes, we're going to be going Warrior Lee Sin in every single game. Now, I'll go ahead and talk through the masteries as I always do. In the offense tree, we take Double-Edged Sword as our first mastery. This is because since Lee Sin's a melee champion, he gets a beneficial trade from this mastery. What this mastery does is that if you're melee, you deal an additional 2% damage and you receive an additional 1%. So, like I said, Lee Sin gets the better end of that deal since he's a melee champion. Pretty much every single melee champion in the game should be taking this mastery. Even if you're a tank or a melee support like Braum or Leona, this mastery is still really, really good, and I recommend taking it. Now, moving on to the next thing, we have Sorcery. Sorcery gives you plus 5 CDR if you have all 4 ranks in it. I do take this on Lee Sin. I've seen some people argue that attack speed is better. Honestly, I think that Lee Sin's passive gives him enough attack speed, especially if you balance it out well. And then I like to have the 5% CDR. It's actually a pretty significant boost in your power before you buy Warrior if you have this 5% CDR. And like I said, some people debate that the attack speed's better because it gets your passive off quicker. But especially with the newest change to Lee Sin's passive where it gives you more energy on the first hit, I definitely think Sorcery is the way to go. Moving on, our next one is Expose Weakness. What Expose Weakness does is if you damage an enemy with a spell, it'll increase your team's damage to that target. And this mastery just screams Lee Sin, almost, because as we just saw with the abilities, if you're insecting a target, then you're going to have hit your Q on them and your ultimate on them. So that's already 2 abilities that will proc this, and when your teammate's going to follow up after you've insect, then you want them to do as much damage as you can to that target. Another reason this mastery is so good is if you use Lee Sin's ult to set up a different kind of team fight. So instead of insecting the enemy AD carry or mid lane or whatever, you instead kick someone into the whole team and get a 3, 4, or 5 man knockup. If you do that, once again, your ultimate's going to be applying Exposed Weakness to all of those targets, and then it's just going to increase your team's damage. So I take Exposed Weakness on a lot of my junglers for different reasons, but since Lee Sin has such a powerful AoE ultimate, and pretty much whoever you're going to ult, you're going to want your team to kill, you have to take Exposed Weakness on Lee Sin. Next up, we have Brute Force and Martial Mastery. These are just the standard AD masteries, and you need to take them to advance. You're obviously not going to want the AP. All they do is that this gives you attack damage per level, and this gives you some flat attack damage. Neither one of these are very significant on their own. However, they do help a little bit, and there's no other mastery that you would want to take over them in order to get deeper into the offense tree. Next up, I take 1 point in Spell Weaving and 1 point in Blade Weaving. What Spell Weaving does is if you damage a champion with an auto attack, your spells will do increased damage to them, and then Blade Weaving's the exact opposite. If you damage them with a spell, your auto attacks will do increased damage to them. And once again, these 2 masteries scream Lee Sin. Basically, these masteries just make your passive very, very good. That's the only way you can describe it. Because if you use a spell, and then you're going to auto attack them twice, and use another spell, the second spell and those auto attacks are all going to have increased damage the whole time that you're fighting. So once again, this is just a very strong ability to have, or a very strong mastery for Lee Sin's kit. Moving to the other side, we have Executioner and Dangerous Game. Executioner increases damage dealt to champions below 50% health by 5%. Lee Sin has an Execute on his kit, so saying that alone, it should be kind of obvious that you really want the Executioner mastery. This mastery is just going to increase the strength of your second Q most of the time. If you're against a tank, it's going to increase your damage on them a lot because we all know how hard tanks are to kill. This mastery directly counters this mastery, honestly, if you've never thought about that. So if you're against a tank that has this mastery where they increase, well, it's this one, sorry. It increases their sustain once they're low health. Then if you have this mastery, it's okay, you're going to cancel that out. Also, the main reason that we want Executioner, not only is it very strong on its own, but it also leads into Dangerous Game. And what Dangerous Game does is, if you get a kill or an assist, you're going to restore 5% of your missing health, and you would restore 5% of your mana, but since you use energy, that's not important. One thing to note, this doesn't restore 5% of your missing energy. That would be pretty broken on energy champions because they already restore their energy so quickly anyways, right? They don't need any help. However, the 5% missing health does make a huge difference in most of your games. You might think that 5% isn't that much, but it basically what this means is that if you get caught out into 2v1 and you know you can kill one target but you might not be able to kill the other one, Dangerous Game might save you from dying to that second target. Or Dangerous Game's also just going to keep you very healthy throughout a whole team fight. So this is a really powerful mastery, and it should never be underestimated. I've actually been saved by my team and saved a lot of people by getting kills or assists when either one of us are low, and that's going to give you the Dangerous Game. This is a really good counter against Ignite. If someone ignites you when you're low, but then you manage to kill them, Dangerous Game might save your life. So overall, this mastery just has so many benefits that it would be a huge waste not to take it. Next up, I do take 3 points in Warlord and only 1 point in Devastating Strikes, and I have a pretty good reason for this. The first reason is that all of Lee Sin's bonus attack damage scalings are so powerful that if you can increase your bonus attack damage even more with a mastery, then obviously you want to take it, right? But some people would argue that taking this and sacrificing 3 points in Devastating Strikes is really bad. However, the other thing that I have for that argument is you're going to be building Warrior and Black Cleaver on all of your Lee Sin games. And if you're building those, you're going to have Armor Pen from Warrior, and of course Black Cleaver shreds armor. Also, your E does magic damage if they build a lot of armor anyways. So overall, I think increasing your bonus attack damage will outweigh the reduced damage that you get by them having Armor Pen for the early game, or by them having armor for the early game, and then late game you're going to have so much armor shredding on your kit anyways. There's no reason to really worry about it. I do take the 1 point in Devastating Strikes, basically because there's no other mastery that you need, and having a little more armor pen isn't going to hurt you at all. It's just, I think having this bonus AD is a lot stronger than having the bonus armor pen. Finally, I take 1 point in Havoc. Havoc gives you plus 3% increased damage. That's increased damage on your auto attacks, on your spells, on your Sunfire Cape if you ever built one, on everything. On your red buff's going to be doing more damage if you have this. So if you're going 20 points into the offense tree, it's half of the reason that you want to do that is so you can unlock Havoc, because it's a really strong mastery on its own. So that's it for the offense tree. As you saw, Lee Sin benefits very greatly from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points that are deep in the offense tree, so it's really a waste if you go 921 on Lee Sin. You could get a little bit tankier, but honestly, you should leave getting tankier to your build if you need to be tankier, not your masteries, because you'd be sacrificing on a lot of stuff that's really good on Lee Sin. Now, moving on to the defense tree. You're going to take 2 points in Tough Skin. The reason that you take 2 points in Tough Skin is the exact same reason you take Armor Yellows, just so the monsters don't kill you too much in the jungle. What Tough Skin does is it reduces damage taken from neutral monsters by 2. Even though it's only 2, and you might think 2 is a pretty pathetic number, you should think about Raptor's Camp on your first clear when you think about Tough Skin. So there are 4 monsters that are going to be hitting you. Each one of their auto attacks is going to be doing 2 less damage if you have this mastery. And since it's going to be your first clear, you're not going to be able to kill them that quickly. So the 2 damage from 4 different monsters is probably going to add up to something around, 50 or 60 life. And that's not that much when you think about it, but at early levels, it does make a huge difference. And this mastery is what's going to be the difference from you being able to gank after you clear your jungle, or you having to back after you clear your jungle. And just because it's only says 2, it should definitely not be underestimated, because Lee Sin's early game is all of Lee Sin's game, as I said earlier. So if you can take this and boost your early game, you definitely should. Now, moving on to Block. Block reduces incoming damage from champion basic attacks by 2. Once again, we have that really small number of 2, and you might think this is a kind of worthless mastery. However, one thing about Lee Sin is that while you're trying to Insec the AD carry, if that's what you're trying to do, they might be kiting you a lot, so they're going to be auto-attacking you a lot. Also, with the build I'm going to be showing you, you are going to get kind of tanky, so you're wanting to be auto-attacked by the enemy AD carry, especially before your AD carry gets attacked, right? So this 2 damage, even though it's only 2, as long as the AD's hitting you a whole team fight, and maybe other people are auto-attacking you too, most top laners need to auto-attack, then this 2 can add up to a couple of hundred life over the whole course of a team fight, and then that's going to make the difference between whether you live or die. And if you're alive, then you can get objectives and push and win the game, right? Next up, we have Unyielding. As a melee champion, which is what Lee Sin is, it reduces all incoming damage from champions by 2. Here we go again. Once again we have this very small number in 2, but this Unyielding Mastery reduces all incoming damage. The only damage that Unyielding doesn't reduce is true damage sources, whether that's Ignite or Vayne's W or Corki's passive, anything like that. Unyielding doesn't reduce, but the rest of it does. Over the whole course of a team fight, because this is going to reduce damage from auto attacks, spells, AoE spells, you know, everything that you might be getting hit with, the 2 is going to add up very, very quickly. It's going to probably be around 300 or 400 health that you saved over the course of a long 5-on-5 team fight. It's definitely worth investing, and once again, it's one of those masteries that you really shouldn't underestimate for its small numbers. Finally, next up we have Veteran Scars and Juggernaut. Veteran Scars only gives you plus 36 health, and this is kind of useful at level 1, you know, to keep clearing. But other than that, this mastery is kind of garbage, and the only reason that we want 3 points in it is so we can unlock Juggernaut. And what Juggernaut does is it gives you plus 3% maximum health, and maximum health is health that you build and Lee Sin's base health. And the reason this mastery is so good is because 2 items that I know you're going to be getting on Lee Sin are Sightstone and Black Cleaver. Whether you're going full damage or full tank or anything, you have to have those 2 items. And both of them give you health, so that health is going to be increased by Juggernaut. Also, in most games that are going pretty even, you're going to want to start getting defense items, which of course we're going to talk a lot more about items as soon as we get to item sets. However, you should just know all the health that you build from your items is going to get increased by this mastery, and it's going to turn into a huge bonus once it comes late game. So that's it for Lee Sin's masteries. I hope I described well enough why you need to take these exact masteries. Like I said, these are the masteries that I take every game as Lee Sin, and I've never changed them, not once. So, yeah, I hope I could help, and next we will jump into item sets. Alright, here we are at item sets, and as I've said before, I don't usually use item sets, but if you want to copy what I'm doing into your client exactly, that's perfectly fine. And if you're brand new to Lee Sin, then I highly recommend that's what you do, because while you're learning a champion, you don't want to have to worry about, oh, should I build this or build that? I'm going to tell you exactly what you want to build, and then once you build this, you can then focus on how you need to be playing Lee Sin. So we're just going to name this Lee Sin items. Alright, first off, since you are a jungler, you're going to want to be taking Hunter's Machete as your first item, and for some reason searching doesn't work. So here we go, Hunter's Machete, 2 health pots, and a yellow trinket. Alright, the reason you want to start with these is because if you don't start with Hunter's Machete, then it's the same thing as Armor Yellows and that one mastery. If you don't start with Hunter's Machete, then you're going to die in the jungle. That's pretty much it. There's no reason not to start with Hunter's Machete as well, because the Smite items are very good, and the Warrior Enchantment's also really good on Lee Sin. You're going to take 2 health pots because that's how many you can afford, and you certainly don't need mana pots on Lee Sin because you don't use mana. Finally, you take the yellow trinket. On most champions, I would say you only take this yellow trinket so that you can check for an invade and you can trade it out later. However, Lee Sin's a little bit different. When you're playing Lee Sin, you're going to want this warding totem because it's a free ward whenever it's up. And then on Lee Sin's W, where you can dash to wards, right? This is basically a free flash. That's what yellow trinket turns into until you buy Sightstone. It's going to be your escape tool or your ganking tool, all of that. You want to keep this yellow trinket until you're able to afford your Sightstone. So that's really important. On your first back, that's what we're going to label this. First back. On Lee Sin, we do take the blue smite. There's a couple of reasons for this. You don't need purple smite on Lee Sin because your sustain is so great as long as you're maxing your W second that there's no reason to worry about purple smite. Red smite is an option on Lee Sin. I have seen some people get this before on Lee Sin, and the times that you would want to get red smite is if you're invading a lot and you want to fight their jungler a lot, or you think you're going to get invaded and you just want a red smite so that you can kill the enemy jungler. Other than that though, Lee Sin doesn't use auto attacks enough to merit taking red smite over blue smite, so I don't recommend it. The benefits of blue smite, if you don't know what it does, is you can smite enemy champions, so you'll steal 20% of their movement speed. What stealing means is that you slow them by 20% and you increase your own movement speed by 20%. The other thing about Blue Smite is that it does a flat amount of true damage to the target that you smite. This is going to be useful if someone's getting away with low health and you want to kill them, or since it is true damage, you know you can include it in your combo with your Q. So you can hit your initial Q, auto them twice, then smite them with this, and then use the rest of your Q, and that's just going to increase how much execution damage you get from your Q. So yeah, we get this for the slow. The slow is going to help you out early before you have Sightstone and you can't make too flashy plays, and the true damage on the smite's also going to help you with your combo a little bit. So first back, you're going to be buying a blue smite, and you're just going to buy a ward, maybe some health potions. If you can buy 2 wards, you might want to do that. The reason you need wards so badly on Lee Sin is obviously so you can use his W whenever you need to. There are going to be some cases where you've placed your yellow trinket and used your W, and then not too long later you need to use your W again to escape, but your yellow trinket's still on cooldown because it's on a really long cooldown. So, you might want to buy a couple of green wards. This is also the same reason that you're going to want to get Sightstone, but you're definitely not going to be able to afford Sightstone on your first back. So, make sure you just go back, buy some health pots, and a green ward or 2 if you can afford it. Now, as far as early game goes, the thing about Lee Sin, while Sightstone is very, very good on him, you should never rush it, because then you're going to be missing out on all the AD and armor pin you could get from this. And as we've talked about, Lee Sin's abilities really need the AD, and getting it here is going to make you a lot stronger. So what you want to do is build Warrior first before you buy a Sightstone or boots or anything. Another thing about Lee Sin is he does have pretty high base movement speed, so not having the boots is not going to necessarily hurt you with all your dashes and your high base movement speed. Anyways, you're going to rush Warrior before you buy anything else. Only thing else that you would buy on your way to Warrior is maybe some health pots and some green wards. Then, while you have Warrior, you're going to want to buy boots. Honestly, I usually just buy boots of speed and then go straight into Sightstone, just because Sightstone is so important on Lee Sin that you want to get it as quickly as you can. But not buying your boots of speed is going to start hindering you if you just bought Sightstone without boots. So, most case scenarios, you want to buy Warrior, boots of speed, and then go ahead and finish your Sightstone. You do leave your Sightstone at level 1. You don't upgrade it to Ruby Sightstone at all early game, just because that's only 800, or that's 800 more gold that you'd be putting into it just to have 1 more ward. So really, that's not worth it. Once you can afford Sightstone, then you're finally going to trade out your yellow trinket for a red trinket. The reason you want red trinkets, obviously, so you can see if there's a ward in a bush if you're trying to gank. Also, you can clear wards that are on dragon if you're trying to secure it, and it's just the best trinket to have on junglers in almost every case. Also, since you already have a Sightstone, it's not like you need the yellow trinket to place wards because you have a Sightstone to place wards. So red trinket's definitely the best one after that. Now, next up, I'll talk about mid-game, what you want to be doing. So, once mid-game comes around, you're probably going to have your boots finished. So, you'll have this. In almost all of my games, I get Mercury Treads on Lee Sin. However, I do like Merc Treads because I don't like being crowd controlled when I'm trying to kick people in the direction that I want to kick them, right? Whether I'm trying to get an Insec off or stuff like that, you don't want to be crowd controlled a lot to where you can't get those off. However, if you're versus a lot of AD and they don't have many AP players, you can obviously get Ninja Tabby instead. But like I said, in almost all of my games, I do go Merc Treads. Next, you're going to, of course, have your Sightstone, and then the next item you want to build is Black Cleaver. So, the reason that you want to get Black Cleaver on Lee Sin, if you don't know what Black Cleaver does, it gives you 400 health, which is a pretty significant amount for an item. It gives you 40 attack damage, which is kind of pitiful for a 3000 health, or a 3000 cost item, because Warrior gives you 45 attack damage and it costs almost 800 less. However, the good thing about Black Cleaver is, one, it gives you 20% CDR. So if you couple that 20% with the 10% you already got from here, and the 5% you got from your Masteries, you're already at 35% CDR, which, if you don't know, the cap is 40%, so you're very close already. Another thing, Black Cleaver has two passives. The first passive is that if you deal physical damage to an enemy champion, then you're going to reduce their armor by 5%, and this can stack up to 6 times to 30%. Lee Sin's Q, his ult, and his auto attacks all deal physical damage, so you're going to get lots of chances to get this passive off on an enemy and just lower their armor and increase the amount of damage you're going to do to them. The second passive that Black Cleaver has is Rage. Dealing physical damage will grant you 20 movement speed for 2 seconds. Assist on cleaved enemy champions or kills on any unit grants 60 movement speed for 2 seconds instead. There's a couple of ways you can use this. One, it's going to help you stick to a target that you queue to, just because while you're auto attacking them, you're going to be getting movement speed, so it's going to be harder for them to run away. Another thing is that if you kill any unit, it gives you 60% movement speed. So that means if you're chasing someone in a lane, you can smite a minion, and then after you smite it, you're going to get this little movement speed boost because you killed it, hopefully, if you smited it, and that's just going to help you chase down enemies. So, Black Cleaver, you definitely always want to get on Lee Sin because the health helps you survive, the attack damage is okay, and the CDR is amazing, and the passives are also really good on Lee Sin. Now, finally, we'll have a last block called Late Game or Final Builds. And what I'm going to do is throw all the items that you could possibly get on Lee Sin, and I'm going to pause it while I do that, and then I'll come back and I'll have this whole section filled out. So I'll see you guys in a second. Okay, we're back with all the items that I think you could possibly get on Lee Sin. And as always, I've tried to list them in order of usefulness, in my opinion. And to be honest, the core, or what I build in almost every one of my Lee Sin games, are these 6 items here. I've already talked about why these 4 are so important. Also, once it becomes really late game, you can, of course, upgrade your Ruby Sightstone, but you don't want to do that until you already have 6 items, and that's the last thing that you want to do is upgrade your Ruby Sightstone. Okay, Dead Man's Plate. If you don't know what it does, it gives you 600 health, which is 200 more than Black Cleaver, and it also costs less than Black Cleaver, so that alone's a pretty strong stat on it. It gives you 50 armor, which is not an insane amount, but it is going to help you survive physical damage some. The 50 armor alongside all the health that it gives you does make a pretty significant difference. It has 2 passives. The first passive is called Dreadnought. While you're moving around, you'll build stacks of momentum, increasing movement speed by up to 60 at 100 stacks. Momentum quickly decays while under the effects of a stun, taunt, fear, polymorph, or immobilize effect, and slowly decays while slowed. So, momentum will increase your movement speed while you move around. This just copes very well with Lee Sin's kit already. Because as I've said, Lee Sin's kit allows you to stay out in the jungle as much as you want and just farm and gank. And if you have an item that's just going to increase your mobility while you move around in the jungle, that's a really good fit for Lee Sin. The second part of Dead Man's Plate, its second part of its passive is Crushing Blow. Your basic attacks discharge all of your momentum. It'll deal 1 physical damage per 2 stacks. If 100 stacks are discharged, damage is doubled, and the target is slowed by 75%, which decays over 1 second. Okay, that's quite a mouthful, and I really hate the way they have this worded. I'm going to say it in my own words. Your first basic attack, while you have momentum, will spend half of the momentum and deal it as damage. Unless if you're at 100 momentum, which is the cap, then it'll deal all of your momentum stacks, so 100 extra physical damage on hit. And if you're a melee at 100 stacks, that auto attack will slow by 75% for 1 second. So 75% is quite a lot of slow, obviously. When you just think about the number, if something was 100% slowed, then they would be stunned, right? So if you're slowing by 75%, you're almost stunning them just from a slow. It is only for 1 second, and it does decay over that 1 second. However, it's a really good to use. You'll be using this auto attack after you Q onto a target, so as soon as you land, you can just auto them once, and they're slowed by 75%. That's going to help you either maneuver around them if you want to Insec them, or your team to catch up to kill them, or anything like that. The slow is just really useful, and coped with the stats that Dead Man's Plate gives you and the first passive, it's just icing on the cake, honestly, for this item on Lee Sin. Next up, I have Banshee's Veil. Banshee's Veil, if you don't know what it does, it gives you 450 health, which is a little better than Black Cleaver, but still not that much. 60 magic resist, which is the most a single item can give you in the game, and 100% base health regeneration, which you don't really care about on Lee Sin, because you don't have sustained problems anyways. However, the reason you might want to get Banshees, one, it's a pretty good magic resist item, and two, this unique passive. It grants a spell shield that blocks the next enemy ability. This shield refreshes after no damage is taken from enemy champions for 40 seconds. Basically, the reason that Banshees is so good on Lee Sin is because it's going to help you Insec a lot. It's going to help you when you're queuing. When you queue onto an enemy AD carry, their support for the most part's first reaction is going to be to try to CC you, right? Think of it as if they had an Annie, and you dash in, Annie has her stun up, so she presses her W or Q or something to try to stun you. Doesn't work because you had Banshees. After that, Annie doesn't have another stun until she casts all of her spells and 2 more, right? So after that, you're going to be able to ward hop uninterrupted and then kick the target back. Also, another good reason to get Banshees on Lee Sin, I didn't mean to do that, is because you don't need Spirit Visage, which is kind of the sister item to Banshees. Spirit Visage gives you a little less health, same magic resist, a little more base health regen, also 10% CDR, and it increases all healing received by 20%. That means that the lifesteal and spell vamp that your W grant you would be increased more by Spirit Visage, and also Spirit Visage would give you the last 5% CDR that you're missing and cap you off. However, once again, like I said, you don't have sustain problems, and you'd basically be paying all this money to get 5% more CDR, which you don't really need over what Banshees gives you. So that's the main reason I have Banshees here, and like I said, these are the 6 items I recommend you to get in almost every Lee Sin game. However, you can also get any of these depending on how the match is going. First up, we have Randuin's Omen. Randuin's gives you 400 health, which is okay. It gives you 60 armor, which is, again, okay. It's not great, but it's not bad. But it also grants you 10% reduced damage taken from critical strikes. So the reason that I would get Randuin's is basically that one stat right there. If I'm versus a Yasuo or a Gangplank or a Tryndamere or an AD carry that is really annoying like Jinx or something, I might get Randuin's Omen just to reduce damage from critical strikes. Randuin's Omen also slows the attack speed of someone who's attacking you by 15%. That's okay, but honestly that's not that big a deal. And then it also has an active, which slows the movement speed of nearby enemy units by 35% for 4 seconds. 4 seconds is quite a long time for them to be slowed, and it doesn't decay at all. So that active on its own is very strong. However, I don't think that this item is strong enough to replace any of the core 6 that I have up here. If I am going to get Randuin's, obviously you trade it out for Dead Man's Plate, and you just get it if you're versus a Yasuo, Tryndamere, or Gangplank and they're doing kind of well. Alright, moving on to the next item, I have Triforce listed. Alright, if you don't know what Triforce does, first off, it pretty much grants you a little bit of every single stat in the game. It gives you 30 attack damage, 30 ability power, 30% attack speed, 10% critical strike chance, 8% movement speed, 250 health, and 200 mana. Obviously, you don't use the mana on Lee Sin, but that's only one stat that you're not making use of out of, 7 or 8, so it's fine. It has the same passive as Black Cleaver. It grants you Rage, which means if you auto attack something, then you will get bonus movement speed, and if you kill something, you'll get even more bonus movement speed. However, the main reason that you want Triforce is because of its Spellblade. After using an ability, the next basic attack deals bonus physical damage equal to 200% of base attack damage on hit. So, it also has a 1.5 second cooldown. While you're playing Lee Sin, as we've talked about so much, you're going to be weaving in your auto attacks alongside your passive as much as you can. Well, your passive alongside your spells as much as you can. So you're going to be using spells and auto attacking a lot already. If you have this really powerful Spellblade, which Trinity Force has a more powerful Spellblade than Frozen Fist, if you didn't know that. If you're using this, then you're going to be doing even more damage on all your hits. This is a really good item to get on Lee Sin if you are absurdly fed. That's the only time that I ever get Triforce on Lee Sin. On paper, Triforce looks like a great item on Lee Sin, except for maybe the mana, but like I said, that's no big deal. Other than that, Triforce looks really, really good. However, Other than the mana, there's also one other thing that's really bad with Triforce, and that would be cost of Triforce. Triforce costs 3,700 gold. Triforce is the second most expensive game, second to Infinity Edge. And Infinity Edge is so expensive, pretty much only 80 carries get it, the role that gets the most gold in the game. So, like I said, only time you want to build Triforce is when you're really, really fed. If you are able to get a Triforce safely in a game, then you're pretty much going to be able to snowball it to a win just off of that, just because of how good this item is. But in most games where you're going even, this item takes way too long to build, and you're just going to get behind by not having the. You could have Black Cleaver way before you get Triforce, or even Dead Man's Plate before Black Cleaver and Triforce. There's many things that you would want before Triforce in an even game. So, Triforce is good on Lee Sin. I'm not denying that at all. It's great, but as a jungler, you're not going to be able to afford it. So don't get it unless if you're really fed. Next up, we have Warmogs. Warmogs gives you 800 health, 200% base health regen, and it grants this passive called Warmog's Heart if you have at least 3,000 maximum health. If you're playing Lee Sin and you have Sightstone, Black Cleaver, and Warmogs, you're going to have 3,000 maximum health, so don't worry about that. If you're playing Lee Sin and you have Sightstone, Black Cleaver, and Warmogs, you're going to have at least 3,000 health, so you're always going to be getting Warmog's Heart. What Warmog's Heart does is it restores 15% of your maximum health every 5 seconds if damage hasn't been taken within 8 seconds. Another way to word that is it restores 3% of your max health every second if you haven't taken damage in 8 seconds. Basically, what Warmogs is right now is a replacement for recalling. And since it grants health, it gives you insane health. Like, if you've seen someone with Warmog's Heart going on, then they just have an absurd amount of health regen until they get back into a fight. This is pretty good on Lee Sin, considering how he uses energy and not mana, so the only reason you would ever want to back late game is for health. And then if you have this item that just grants you tons of health regen instead of backing, then you can stay closer to where you need to be with your team, and overall that's going to be more useful to you. However, the thing about this is that it is paying almost 2,800 gold just for a lot of health get back. Lee Sin already has a lot of sustain on his kit, so that shouldn't be at the top of your priority list. I'm not saying this item isn't useful on Lee Sin. What I am trying to say is that you can get around not having it, and since that is true, you should probably be building something else instead of it. So the times I might get Warmogs on Lee Sin is if the enemy team has a lot of AD, and instead of building Deadmans, I built Randuins, and then I might get Warmogs as my last item on that kind of build. But in most games, I'm not going to want to get Warmogs. Also, another type of game that would be good to have Warmogs is if it's a really slow game and you find that your team's sieging a lot and they're just waiting on you to try to kick someone. Then you might want Warmogs because you can take some harass and then hide in the back of your team, heal up to full, then go back in and try to make another play. Overall, this item is good, but the downsides are that you don't necessarily need it, so why would you be building it? Okay, next up we have Thornmail. Thornmail costs 2,300 gold, so it's actually refreshingly low compared to the other items I've talked about. It grants you 100 armor, which is of course the most a single item can give you in the game, and it has a passive. Upon being hit by a basic attack, you reflect magic damage back to the attacker equal to 25% of your bonus armor plus 15% of the damage they would be dealing to you, and that damage is calculated before your resistances. So, Thornmail is pretty similar to Randuins on Lee Sin in my opinion. Only time you need to get Thornmail is when you're versus a kind of weird team comp, whether it's a lot of AD or they just have a really fed AD carry and they don't have a lot of lifesteal. Then you would want Thornmail because it's going to do a lot of damage to them. However, since they changed Thornmail, it actually became a lot weaker on Lee Sin because, like I said, Lee Sin has these 4 items that you have to get every single game. And none of these 4 items gives you armor. So if you're getting Thornmail, and part of the damage that it does is based on your bonus armor, you don't have any bonus armor to go with it. It's just going to be the damage calculated from its armor and the armor you get from your runes. So that's why I don't usually get it on Lee Sin. You can get it if you're versus a lot of ADs, but other than that, it's not very good. And it'd be better to just replace that slot with Dead Man's Plate. Next up, I have Malamar Mortius. Malamar Mortius, in most people's opinion, isn't that great of an item, and really it's not. But surprisingly enough, it's the second best magic resist item for Lee Sin. What Malamar Mortius does, if you don't know, is it gives you 60 attack damage, which is a decent amount for an item to give you. It's 20 more than Black Cleaver gives you, and it's only 200 more gold. So that's pretty good. It gives you 40 magic resist, which once again, that's not a bad amount. The most that you can get from a single item is 60, so 40 is pretty near that. However, the thing about Malamar Mortius, even before I read its passives, is that it costs a lot of money. It's the second most expensive item that I've listed so far. And all it's giving you is a little bit of damage and a little bit of magic resist. And those aren't always the most useful stats to have at this point in the game. So that's why I don't recommend it. Basically, Maw falls into the same category as Thornmail and Randuin's. The times that you would want to get it is when you're versus a lot of AP and they don't have much AD. Then you can afford to get it. Other than that, don't worry about it. Malamar Mortius gives you two passives. The first grants +1 attack damage for every 2% of your health missing, up to a maximum of 35 attack damage. Now that, on paper, is very overpowered. That would mean that Malamar Mortius, the item, is giving you 95 attack damage, which is the most a single item can grant you in the game. However, you're only going to be hitting that absurd number when you're missing a lot of your attack damage. You'd have to be, I mean, not attack damage, sorry. You'd have to be missing 70% of your life in order to get that huge attack damage boost. And at that point, you're pretty close to dying, especially if you built Malamar Mortius and you don't have that much health to begin with. The second passive is that it has a unique passive called Lifeline. Upon taking magic damage, that would reduce health below 30%, which is where you would be once the first passive is maxed out. It grants a shield that absorbs 400 magic damage for 5 seconds. By the time that you would want to get Malamar Mortius on Lee Sin in the jungle, 400 magic damage is nothing. 400 magic damage late game is, it's not that much. So, for example, 80 carries do 400 AD in like 2 auto attacks late game, right? So an AP mage would do 400 magic damage and their equivalent of 2 auto attacks, which is like half of a damage over time spell or something like that. It's because of the weak amount the shield grants you and the way that its passives work that this item really isn't that good. And if you were getting Malamar Mortius, you would be sacrificing an item that would be giving you health, and the health in the long run is probably going to be more survivability than Maw would grant you. So overall, I don't almost ever get this on Lee Sin, but if you were versus a 4 AP comp and they had 1 weak 80 carry, then yeah, Maw would be pretty good in that scenario. Okay, next up we have Locket of the Iron Solari. Locket, if you don't know what it does, it gives you 400 health, which is pretty good. 100% base health regen, yeah, who cares? 20 magic resist, and 10% CDR. The 20 magic resist is kind of pitiful and this expensive of an item, and the 10% CDR is useful. It'll cap out your CDR at 40%. The reason that this item gives you 20 magic resist is because of its active and its passive. Its active is that you grant a shield to nearby allies, which includes yourself, for 2 seconds that absorbs up to 75 plus 15 per level damage, and it's on a 60-second cooldown. So once you get to late game on this item, since it does scale by 15 per level, once you get late game, this shield nears about 300 on each target, and then if you hit all 5 members of your team, in theory you could be blocking 1500 damage from your team, and that, on paper, is all really good. However, the second part of it, before I talk about why this item isn't good on Lee Sin, we'll talk about its passive. It grants nearby allies, which includes you, 15 magic resist. So overall, this item's actually giving you 35 magic resist, which isn't awful. It's not that good, but it's not nearly as bad as just 20 is. Now, the reasons that you won't be getting Locket on Lee Sin in most of your games is, one, it's really a support item. Not to kind of force that onto support players or anything, but it's much better suited for support players to buy than Lee Sin. And in most of your games, you want to ask your support if they'll get it instead, so you don't have to. Second reason is that it doesn't grant you as much stats as other items could, and on Lee Sin, you have to build kind of selfishly. And that's because Lee Sin already provides a ton to his team with his ult, if you use it correctly. So you don't also need to be providing for your team in your item sets. Leave that to someone else is pretty much my opinion on Locket. Other than that, though, the stats it gives you are pretty good, other than its abysmal magic resist. And the shield's going to help your team a lot. So if your support isn't getting Locket, then you definitely should, and you can just replace Black Banshee's Veil with it. But other than that, don't get it. Just ask your support to, and you'll be a lot stronger off on your own. Next up, we have Quicksilver Sash and Mercurial Scimitar. I won't even say 9 games out of 10, pretty much 99 games out of 100, you would not want to get Quicksilver Sash on Lee Sin. However, if you're versus a team that has a lot of AoE ults, for example, maybe they have, Galio, Fiddlesticks, Sejuani, Annie, the works, Ashe, AD carry, something like that, then Quicksilver Sash would be good. Also, if they have a Warwick or a Malzahar, Quicksilver Sash would be good. And the reason that you might want Quicksilver Sash is if you're going to kick their AD carry back and they're just going to suppress you while you try it, then you can Quicksilver Sash and still get away with what you were trying to do. However, like I said, in almost all the games that you play, Banshees is going to cover that role fine, so you don't need to buy Quicksilver Sash. And then Quicksilver Mercurial Scimitar falls into the same problems that Maw does. The stats are good, but it's very expensive. You're a jungler, you're not going to be getting that much gold, and it doesn't give you enough resistances to merit buying it over a different item. So times I might get this one, like I said, if you're against one of those crazy comps that just CCs you until you die, literally. Or two, maybe you're really far ahead and you want a damage magic resist item. Mercurial's honestly a little bit stronger than Maw just because it gives you 80 attack damage all the time, while Maw would only be giving you that much attack damage when you're missing some health. Next up, I have ZZ Rot Portal. ZZ Rot Portal's okay on Lee Sin. It's honestly not that great. What ZZ Rot Portal does, if you didn't know, it gives you 60 armor, 60 magic resist, 150 base health regen. You build up movement speed while you're near turrets. So while you're running down a lane, you'll have increased movement speed. And it also has an active that you can spawn this miniature turret, and the turret will spawn little voidlings, and the voidlings will run up to turrets and attack them, and they'll die, and they'll do some damage. This item is okay to get when, one, your team can't push at all, you just have short range, no wave clear, stuff like that, but you are winning and you want to push, you could get this item then. Another time is when you're against just a really balanced enemy team. They have equal parts AD and magic resist, and you need both of those resistances, then you could get ZZ Rot Portal. It does give you the most magic resist an item can grant you in the game, so that's pretty strong. But my main complaint with ZZ Rot Portal is that most of the time you would be getting it for the movement it provides, and if you want movement, then you need to be getting Dead Man's Plate, not ZZ Rot Portal. So in most cases where you'd want ZZ Rot, instead buy Dead Man's Plate. Next up, we have Guardian Angel. Guardian Angel is pretty good on Lee Sin, just because. So what Guardian Angel does, it gives you 50 armor and 50 magic resist. Those are decently high. They're high enough to be considered good. And it has a unique passive. Upon taking lethal damage or being killed, you'll instead go into stasis for 4 seconds and then come out of it with 30% of your max health restored. Now this is pretty good on Lee Sin because Lee Sin is a fighter, like I mentioned earlier, and you're going to be fighting a lot. So if you're able to die and then come back with some life and keep fighting, that's really good. Another thing is that Lee Sin has incredibly high sustain, so if you come out of your Guardian Angel and you're in a 1v1, then you're probably just going to be able to sustain and win that fight and then go sustain up. But once again, this item is, you're only going to be able to revive every 5 minutes if you buy this item. And this item's also kind of weak on one person. So the times that I would want to get Guardian Angel on Lee Sin are, one, if my team's all building Guardian Angels, because one Guardian Angel on its own's okay, but like 5 Guardian Angels just means that your team gets to team fight twice, while the enemy team gets to team fight once. So that would be really strong. And then 2, same thing as ZZ Rot Portal, if they have a really balanced AD and AP team, and you need both the resistances, then you might want to get Guardian Angel. However, overall, it doesn't give you any health, and I really value health on Lee Sin because he has such good ways of getting health back that if you have a lot of health, that just works out. And yeah, I just don't like Guardian Angel, in my opinion, as an item that well. However, it does have some merit on Lee Sin, and you should put it on this list, and you can get it if members of your team are already getting it. It's going to be my basic rule for that. Finally, after you've considered all of these items and you have your 6 items, then you're going to be finishing and buying a Ruby Sightstone. All that does is give you well, let me see. It'll give you 250 more health than this gives you, and it gives you another ward. So, unfortunately, the way Lee Sin is, you have to have a Sightstone, even if you're very, very far ahead and you have 6 items and you're thinking, maybe I should sell my Sightstone and buy Triforce. You might have enough gold to even do that, but you shouldn't, because not having wards to jump to is missing out on such a large part of your kit that you'll just be really weak. So you'll be getting Sightstone as your last item, and then after that, just buy potions. I've never actually talked about what potion to buy on your champion. Elixir, I should say. Oh, I didn't know it was spelled with an I. Okay. Anyways, you would honestly probably like 7 out of 10 games you'd want Elixir of Iron, and then in the other times you can get Elixir of Wrath. What Elixir of Iron does is it grants you 25% increased size, slow resistance, and tenacity, and this passive called Path of Iron, but you're buying it for the tenacity pretty much. This doubles with Merc Treads, and it's just going to make you ignore a lot of CC, and that's pretty good. This is what I would get, like I said, in most of my Lee Sin games late game. However, if your team's winning by a lot, you can get Elixir of Wrath instead. What Elixir of Wrath does gives you a little bit more attack damage, and then Bloodlust. And what Bloodlust does is you heal for 10% of the physical damage that you deal to champions. Since Lee Sin's Q and ult deal physical damage and you're autoing a lot, this does get a lot of gold value on Lee Sin. But you should only get it if your team is winning by a large margin. Then this potion's really good, but otherwise you should probably be getting Elixir of Iron. So, that's it finally for item sets. Like I said, I hope you copy this directly into your client if you're brand new to Lee Sin. And then after this, we'll jump into a gameplay. Okay, here we are loading into the gameplay. And as always, when you're loading into a game, you want to look at the enemy team and try to plan out your early game. As far as the enemy team goes, for this Fortune has very little escapes. All that she can do is flash away, and if her flash is on cooldown, then she has no escape. Ari has her ult and flash, so she's very hard to gank. And then Olaf actually didn't take flash this game, but other than that, when he has his ultimate, he's going to be almost impossible to gank. So, as far as ganks that I want to pull off this game, I'm looking top lane for half of them until level 6, and then post level 6, I probably just want to be bot lane. As far as specifics for Lee Sin go, the mindset that you need to have while playing Lee Sin is that you are stronger than the opponent's champion's early game. And what I mean by that is, while you're playing Lee Sin, as I said during the ability breakdown, Lee Sin wins almost every 1v1 versus enemy champions early game. The only champion that, off the top of my head, is the exception to this is Pantheon. Pantheon can beat Lee Sin in 9 out of 10 1v1s. Only way that Lee Sin would have an advantage is if Lee Sin caught him without mana. So other than that though, Lee Sin almost always would win a 1v1 versus an enemy champion. So to play for that, I'm going to be playing pretty aggressively, and that's the general playstyle that you want to do on Lee Sin. Lee Sin's not a jungler that you want to spend time farming your jungle a lot or anything like that. You need to... Hold on, let me make sure we have my vision and we don't want chat on. Okay. Anyways, you want to play really aggressive on Lee Sin. So on almost all of my Lee Sin games, I'll be looking for a level 3 gank somewhere. It doesn't have to be top lane. In this particular game, top lane's actually looking really good since Olaf didn't take flash. However, in some other games, due to Lee Sin's incredible sustain, you can start wherever you want and jungle there. So as you saw with Krugs, I led with my Q, auto attack twice, and then you smite before you use your second part of your Q, because as you remember, Q is an execute, and then here I'm just clearing my jungle, pretty basic stuff. You want to use your auto spell. Lee Sin doesn't have any auto resets or anything like that, so you don't have to worry about that. And yeah, so I'm clearing my jungle. As we know, Olaf does not have flash, and his exhaust is down. My Maokai told me that Olaf had warded the river, so I'm going to go ahead and ward hop over the wall. That's one great thing about Lee Sin. Whenever you want to gank a lane and you know that you can't go through the river, you can just use your trinket and ward hop over. So, Maokai and Olaf actually get in a fight. Maokai barely lives, but he did almost kill Olaf. And then I don't want to not get any gold for coming up top. I didn't necessarily want to kill steal this, but I didn't also want to waste my time walking up there just to get some experience because Olaf died near me. So since he was going to die to the turret one way or another, I go ahead and flash in to make sure I at least get an assist. It turns out I got the kill, which, to be honest, is probably the best case scenario because Maokai is a tank and Lee Sin needs to build damage and he needs gold. So the fact that I got the kill is going to benefit my team. Now that I've done that, I'm going to go back to jungling. The reason I'm jungling right now is because my Zed was kind of pushed up versus Ahri. And the thing about that, they were pretty much even. But the thing about this is that Ahri's ranged and Zed's melee. So if they're in the same spot, then Ahri has an advantage to escape a gank that Zed doesn't. So Elise gank Zed's. Elise also has a little bit larger gap closer and a stun over Lee Sin. So it was just much more beneficial for her to gank mid. So I'm just going to keep jungling because there's nowhere for me to go. I might want to gank bot, but if I am going to gank bot, then I'm going to clear my jungle on the way down there. The enemy bot lane is kind of pushed up, so I'm looking toward gank it right now, but they are missing. So I'm going to start Scuttle Crab, and then bot lane comes up, and as soon as I see Alistar, I ward hop away. Luckily, I actually timed this well enough to where I could dodge Alistar's combo. That was not intentional. All that was me, as soon as I saw Alistar, I wanted to leave, so I did. Now, as far as the game's going, what I need to be doing is ganking bot as much as I can, and maybe making one more run top before they hit 6, but I think they're about to hit 6 any second, so really I should be looking towards bot. When I went back, I went ahead and bought a blue smite and some longswords. On most champions, you want to buy your smite immediately after you clear the jungle. Here, let me slow this down. You want to buy your smite immediately after you clear your first, after you do your first clear. But since Lee Sin has such great sustain, you don't have to do that. So, as I've said before, Lee Sin has the option to go back whenever he wanted. So I didn't want to go back until I could buy 2 longswords and be pretty strong in 1v1s. Now I'm going to keep jungling until I hit level 6. And I did just hit level 6 on the Raptors. I see that Ahri's kind of pushed up, and she is also pretty much out of mana. She doesn't even have enough to use her ult right now, so Zed's going to go ahead and ult on her. He does his initial burst. I'm going to ward hop over here because I was expecting an Ahri flash or anything, but her flash is on cooldown, and Zed's going to almost kill her. He's not going to quite get it, so I'm going to come in on the Elise, and I think I'm going to ult her here, hopefully hitting the Ahri in the process. Didn't actually hit the Ahri, but that's okay. The Elise finishes off the Zed pretty greedily, and then me and Thresh are going to be able to finish off the Elise here. Yeah. So, unfortunately my ult didn't hit the Ahri, but if it had, that would have been an easy kill. Here, Ahri's kind of baiting me. She does have her ultimate up, and she has the mana to use it now, so I'm not going to go dive her. I did just make her use her ult, if you saw, as soon as I dashed to my ward. And now I'm just going to probably go back to jungling for a little bit. Yep. Okay, so since all of my jungle is up, I want to start over here, give blue to my Zed. I don't really need it. Zed doesn't really need it either, but I want him to be able to beat this Ahri, so I'm going to give him the blue for that advantage. And then I'm going to back because I needed to buy. I could buy my warrior and a sight stone, so now I've hit one of Lee Sin's major power spikes. As soon as you buy your sight stone, you're able to make a lot more plays, and you're able to play even more risky than you were originally because you have a flash every 14 seconds as long as you have wards up. So, that being the case, I'm going to be looking for a gank right now. Bot lane looks alright. They've got Misfortune in a pretty bad spot, and they are going to kill her here. Alistar's trying to finish off the kill on my Vayne, but my bot lane's playing it pretty well. He is going to get the kill, and then I'm just going to come in and finish him off just to make sure that Thresh didn't die to some cheese from Alistar. Not taking any chances there. I did use my ult, but Lee Sin's ult ult's cooldown is not very long at all. As you can see, it's already 76.5 seconds. That's a little over a minute. And early game, you're really not going to be fighting more than once a minute, probably. So feel free to use your ult in one of those scenarios. Don't hold Lee Sin's ult ever. If you ever know that using your ult's going to directly benefit you, then you should use it. Here Zed's getting ganked, but he's pretty slippery, so he's going to escape from this. He does greedily, though, go back in on the Ahri, and Ahri had barrier up and Elise there to cover, so Zed's not going to get any kills, but we did get the dragon for it. As far as me, I'm perfectly fine with that because I'm starting to get very, very fed. I'm 2-0-1. We've already secured a dragon, so I don't have to worry about it. I do have my sightstone. At this point, I'm pretty free to do whatever I want, wherever I want on the map. So right now, my Maokai is trying to make a play bottom, but I'm pretty sure that's not going to work out. I know that their bot lane has some wards in the river, so I'm just going to keep jungling. And yeah, I meant to speed that up, sorry. But now I'm coming bot. We did have a pink in this ward, in this bush. I'm pretty sure bot lane had wards, like I said, in the river, but obviously they don't have a ward here since we have a pink. I'm going to go ahead and come in and ward dash. Misfortune's flash is not up. I'm pretty sure I knew that. My bot lane told me. So all I need to do right now is ult Misfortune, which I'm going to do. I interrupt her ult and I get her into the turret, and then once she's in the turret, she's an easy kill from there. Here, we're going to go ahead and beat on Alistar because although he is ulting, he still does take some damage, and he was a lot safer to fight than the Elise was. So, we're going to beat on Alistar until Elise gets really greedy for the Thresh. The Thresh had a great ult and a great flash to bait her out. And then after that, Alistar's ult is over, and since we whittled him down while he was using it, he's also an easy kill there. So, my bot lane played that very well, especially a lot better than their bot lane. What I did there was I interrupted Misfortune's ult with my own ult, and then after that just stayed with Vayne, if you noticed that as well. I did mention earlier that Lee Sin's a very good bodyguard, and what a bodyguard is, if I didn't mention it already, is someone who just takes care of their AD carry. Here, I'm going to rewind. I want to talk about this whole fight. But what a bodyguard is someone that takes care of their AD carry. And the reason that Lee Sin's so good at this is because, one, he has a dash that shields his ally when he uses it on them. And then two, my ult, well, not Olaf because he can ult, but if any other champion's trying to kill Vayne, I can just dash to her, shield her from some damage, and then ult that target away. So that's one thing that you need to really get used to while you're playing Lee Sin. Like I said, there are some cases where you'll get really fed, and then since you're so fed, you can just kill opponents. But in even games like this, like in my game, it's pretty even. They're actually ahead in gold because of the turret difference. What you need to be doing is playing with your AD carry in mind. And if you don't have a good AD carry on Lee Sin, that's going to really hinder you. You can play bodyguard for your mid lane if you need to, but for the most part, you just stick with your AD carry. But here we go. They're pushing mid, and I'm going to go ahead and come up and see what I can do. We do have a pink ward here, so I know they don't have sight of me until I show. Zed gets very, very aggroed after I hit a Q, so I'm going to go in to try to assist him some. We are focusing the Olaf, which really isn't the best target to focus. I don't have my ult up either, but we are going to kill him here because I do hit my Q. Now, Zed's going to try to avoid the Ahri, and I'm not very scared of the Ahri because I know that she only has one tick of her ult, and she just used all of her spells. So I'm going to go ahead and play aggro, but then Elise comes at a very good time. Elise actually flashes in to stun me, and then I'm going to die. So, honestly, it's not that I played that poorly. It's just that I didn't have very good map awareness there. I should have looked at the map and saw that we had no idea where Elise or Alistar were, because either one of them could have done that to me. And a good mindset would have been to expect them to come mid to save their mid laner. So, right now, like I said, the enemy team's actually a little bit ahead. Well, actually, we've evened it up, but the enemy team has a lot more turrets than us, and we're barely ahead in kills. So, all in all, this is a really close game, even though I'm doing very well. 3-1-4 is an exceptional score for a jungler this early in the game. So, we're going to group mid. We're pretty sure that our team fight's better than the enemy teams for a couple of reasons. One is because Zed, although Zed's kind of weak, he still does a lot of damage, as you saw when he did that damage to Olaf earlier. And I'm really fed, and my Vayne's really fed. So as long as us two are fed, we have a pretty good team fight. That's why we're grouping. But then Vayne wants to stop Misfortune from farming bot. That's perfectly fine. And because of that, I'm going to keep jungling. Now, Olaf is acting a little bit too cocky. He does have his ult, but even with that, he's only half health. So pretty soon, I think we're going to be able to kill him. Yeah, he tries to go in on Vayne with his ultimate, and he had exhaust up, but no matter who he had exhausted, he still would have died. So it was just a little bit too much greediness from him. Alistar tries to help the Olaf, but then Maokai comes in and stops him. I hit a Q on Misfortune, and I didn't have enough energy to ward hop, and my flash wasn't up, so there was no way for me to kick her back. That was just a little bit of harass. And yeah, now we're going to work on the turret. So as you saw in that fight as well, like I said, I was just protecting Vayne from Olaf. Other people on our team were doing that as well, but throughout this whole game, you're going to see me in team fights just dash to Vayne and make sure that she's okay, because once again, Lee Sin doesn't scale well into late game. I can't do that much damage on my own, but I can protect my AD carry really well, and then hopefully they'll be able to do the damage. So here they just got to kill an Olaf bot because once again, he's acting very cocky, so then that kind of means it's a free dragon for us since they're going to at most have 4 and we have 5 people. So we go ahead and secure it, and then we do actually need to leave because our Zed recalled, but overall, we're doing really well as a team. Here's our Thresh hits a really good hook on Ahri. However, we're not able to follow up that well on it because Alistar knocks me back and Maokai gets charmed by Ahri. So while the hook itself was really good, unfortunately he shouldn't have gone in because he didn't have the numbers. Zed wasn't there and Vayne wasn't close enough to fight immediately. So now they're pushing mid. I know that if I go into this, I'll die, so I'm acting pretty scared. I'm going to throw out a Q just to try to see if the enemy team will come chase me. I know that I can escape them because my flash is almost up, and I also have wards to jump to with my W. I wasn't ever going to go into that fight just because I was so low, but it was good to harass them. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get my red, and the reason I want my red is because, well, I'm going to give it to Vayne, but if my... One thing I should have done there is smited the red just to get a huge health boost, and then I could have grouped with my team. But the enemy team is backing, so that's no big deal. I'm going to go ahead and head over to my blue buff after this. I want my Maokai to take blue, honestly, because he's the only one that uses mana, and it'd be pretty beneficial on him. But he doesn't want it, so I'm going to go ahead and secure it before the enemy team comes and tries to steal it. Well, Zed's going to come get it, but either way, I secured it. Now, once again, Olaf is acting very, very cocky. The thing about Olaf's ult is that it doesn't... Yeah, he doesn't get the resistances that his ult grants him while he's using it. So that's something that Olaf players tend to confuse. They activate their ult and they think that, well, one, they can't be disabled, but two, that they're going to be able to do a lot of damage and not take much. And they will be able to do a good amount of damage, but he loses a lot of his base resistances. So he's just very easy to kill while he's ulting if you focus him down. Now, I'm hanging out with Vayne again because, once again, that's what you want to be doing on Lee Sin. But nothing's happening, so I'm going to go back to jungling. Just clearing whatever's up. I noticed that Zed... I know that they're coming to gank Zed because he was pushed very far up and he had less than half health. So I'm going to go ahead and make my way up here immediately because I don't really want Zed to get killed by the enemy team. I'm going to ult Alistar back because I figured that if I had tried to ult Olaf, he would have just ulted anyways and I wouldn't have been able to kill him. And then here, I'm going to work on killing Olaf before he finishes my Zed. But Olaf did ult very late there, if you noticed, so I probably could have got away with ulting him first and saving my Zed. However, my team does follow up on me going top, save the Zed, and then because of that, we're able to get a better trade out of it. Just Zed for 2 of them dead. Unfortunately, our Zed had to kind of play scapegoat this game. He did a really good job of it, though, because the enemy team kept trying to focus him down for really no reason. He wasn't doing well, but they kept focusing him. And then because of that, me and Vayne are just going to get obscenely fed. I'm going to get a bunch of assists, and Vayne's going to get a bunch of kills. So, now we're doing the Baron. And the thing about this is that I don't like doing Barons when there's a high risk of steal. And me and Elise both have executes on our Q, so that kind of takes away Lee Sin's advantage of being able to secure buffs because, like I said when we talked about his abilities, yes, my Q is going to guarantee do the 400 extra damage so I can add that to my smite, but then Elise also has an execute. So I don't really have an advantage over her. And it's because of that I asked my team not to keep doing the Baron. They do stop. We kill the Ahri because she was too close. And then we're going to just work on pushing. The time that I would like to Baron is if we manage to kill the Elise, or just pretty much everyone but the Elise, and then we can just kill her if she tries to contest it. My team's pushing top, which is good. Top and mid are the two lanes that you want to push while Baron is alive, because of course they have the closest proximity to Baron. You never push bot lane while Baron's alive, because if you do, then the enemy team's just going to get a free Baron, and almost always they're going to be able to outpush whatever you got with the Baron buff. Dragon's up in 10 seconds, so I think I'm going to be... I do want to go down to it, that's why I showed up mid first, but then I see that there's a fight going on top lane, and Vayne is definitely our carry right now. She has 11 kills and only 2 deaths, so I'm going to do whatever I can to keep her safe. As you saw there, I did dash in front of her to tank the Elise E. I don't care if I get stunned, I don't even care if I die in these team fights. What I want to do is make sure that Vayne's alive, because she's going to do the most damage for our team. There at the end I did something kind of cute. I just want to show it again. I know that Elise will die to my ultimate if I either ult her or if I knock someone into her. And then luckily for me, Olaf runs right where he can be knocked into her, so I kind of bowl him into her, get a strike. Alright. Now I want to be getting this dragon right now because, as I've said before in my videos, even though my team is very much winning, like we have an 11-3 AD carry, I have a 12 KDA, my Thresh has a 13 KDA, we're all doing really well. However, something bad could happen. We could either keep throwing, or Zed could actually turn out to be a really big problem because he's so behind, or maybe someone DCs for a little bit. Any one of these things happens in solo queue all the time. So to safeguard that, I'm going to try to keep securing as many dragons as I can. Because as you probably know, once you get 5 dragons, you kind of just win the game from that point on. So if you can secure all the dragons up to that, then you're going to have a lot easier time. But here, I come in for the steal. Unfortunately, Alistar was blocking my Q, so I don't have nearly as good of a chance of stealing it as I normally would. But overall, it was just a 50-50, and Elise happened to win it because I wasn't paying enough attention to the dragon. It's not that bad for our team, but it would have been a lot better if we could have secured that dragon, because if we had, then after that, the next dragon becomes 5 dragon threat, because once you kill the 4th dragon, then the whole enemy team has to keep preparing to stop your 5th dragon get, right? And it completely changes the pace of the game. Anyways, we get in a fight bot, and I see that Alistar had to back and Elise was low, so I call for my team to go ahead and do Baron. We do Baron very quickly because Vayne has Zeke's Herald, and she has Blade of the Ruin King, and she's Vayne. So I know we're going to be able to kill this Baron quickly. I do miss the smite by just a little bit, but it's no big deal because Ahri was hooked and Alistar already had used his headbutt, so he couldn't finish it off. Here I'm going to flash away from the Olaf because I don't want to die to him, but I did try to stay in as long as I could just so Vayne could get free hits on him, and then I'm actually going to come back in because I want to make sure that my Vayne lives this team fight. However, as soon as I get back in, she does die to some crits from Misfortune, and then everyone's dead. It happened pretty quickly. What happened was Thresh got a hook on Ahri, and he went in on that, because normally that's what you would want to do. But we were all so low from the Baron, it was kind of a bad fight. Would have been better if Thresh had gone in and all the rest of us had just run immediately, but they tried to fight it. Unfortunately, we barely lose it. They had 2 alive, and we had 1 alive, which was me. Misfortune apparently forgot that I was the one that lived. Or maybe she just thought she could 1v1 me, but this is the part where Lee Sin becomes an assassin, quote quote. Once I'm 4-1 and 10 and the enemy AD carry has 6 deaths, I'm going to be able to 1v1 her very easily. I had my ult up if it had been even close at all, and as you saw, I did miss a Q. Like, it was not even in the ballpark of close. Misfortune just kind of either underestimated Lee Sin, or maybe she thought she got an ace and that I was actually dead. It was one or the other. However, it's going to benefit our team. Now, I still have the Baron buff, and what Baron is this season, a lot of people have Baron confused, and that's something I want to make clear. Baron is a pushing buff. I'm actually going to pause it. You do not get Baron to team fight. A lot of people confuse that, and it's a really bad conception of what Baron does. Because, yes, Baron gives you a little bit increased attack damage and ability power. That's true. That would help you in a team fight. However, that increased attack damage and ability power also helps you destroy turrets quicker. The empowered recall makes sure that you can go buy your items and then start pushing immediately after you kill Baron. And, of course, the third passive, the important one, is that nearby allied minions are vastly enhanced. Basically, why I'm saying this is because if you waste any time of Baron team fighting, and you could possibly lose Barons, then you're completely wasting it. Dragon now is the thing that you team fight with. 5 dragons is the thing that you always try to team fight with as much as possible. Baron, you can team fight with if the enemy forces a bad fight, but overall, you're just trying to siege turrets and take down turrets that you normally wouldn't be able to get without Baron. So, sorry, that was kind of a rant, but I felt like that needs to be made clear for you guys that are going to be watching this video. Treat Baron as a pushing buff, not as a team fighting buff, is what I really meant to say. So, I do still have Baron. It's a little over halfway done, so we got quite some time here to push. All we're doing is letting our improved Baron minion take out the turret. That's it. Vayne's pretty low ranged, so she's not going to be able to auto-type the turret very much without being in huge risk of Alistar comboing her. So all we do is wait for the minions to do the work for us. Our Zed got in a 1v1 with Ahri, and it was really close, but unfortunately he's just way too behind to be trying to 1v1 her at this point. She has Zhonya's, and that completely counters his ult. So he loses that, and then because of that, we have to play a lot more safe. We could definitely beat them at a 4v4, but the thing is, we might not win the 4v4 before Ahri's able to group with them, and then it becomes a 4v5, and then we might lose that. So now we're playing kind of safe. Unfortunately, this is going to be the last of my Baron, so after they do their little push and then leave, now we're going to be looking for team fights, because Baron's out, and now the only way we're going to get easy pushes off is if we kill the enemies first. So Thresh gets a hook on Alistar, but I don't want to do anything to Alistar. He's not threatening Vayne, and he's not a good person to kick back to my team, so I'm not going to mess with him. Here, Alistar comes in to combo, and then Zed dodges it by using his W, and pretty much nothing happens. Now, they are harassing Maokai down, and it looks like a teamfight's about to start any second. Maokai ults in anticipation for a teamfight, but then Thresh just hooks him out, so it's no big deal. Okay. So now we're literally just grouping. Zed's gonna go clear the large wave top because we didn't want to lose a turret to it, but because of that, that means we have to play very, very safe here, and we also need to be looking for them to maybe try to kill Zed top because they're probably gonna do that. So me and Vayne are just hanging out once again on Lee Sin. Once it comes to late game, all you do is protect your Vayne or whatever your AD carry is. The only time you wouldn't do this is one, if your AD carry is very, very behind, or two, you have a very, very weak AD carry like Corki or Ezreal or something. They're okay, but they don't do that much damage. So in that case, and if you had a stronger mid, you would probably just protect the mid instead. But other than that, protect your AD carry. Here I'm going to give Vayne the red, of course, because she's obscenely fed. And then we're going to work on the dragon. This is going to be the third dragon. Third dragon is kind of important. It's not as important as fifth or first, but other than that, it's in third place, ironically, because the movement speed's going to make a difference in whether you're able to chase enemies down and kill them, or whether you're able to escape team fights. So 3 of us go to dragon, but then unfortunately Vayne and Zed don't want to do dragon, and they try to get in a fight, and they're just outnumbered, so they lose their little duel with the enemies. And then we're 3 men down because Thresh tried to combo Alistar, but Alistar's tanky enough to where if I spent time trying to kill him, they would kill me before I killed him. So now we're just hanging around. They are going to have someone teleport in, and at this point we pretty much know this inhib's dead no matter what we do, so we're going to leave it alone. And yeah, just wait to get back as 5 again. Even though they did just win that, we're still ahead enough to team fight. If I had been there with the Vayne, if it was me and Vayne instead of Zed and Vayne, I'm pretty sure she would have lived just because of Lee Sin's bodyguarding properties. So I'm not even letting that last play phase me. All I want to do with my team now is group, and hopefully I can either get a really good ult off, or we can just get a decent team fight because we have a strong team fighting team anyways. So now I'm securing the blue. I think I'm going to steal it. Well, not steal it, but just take it because Zed's so weak that I don't think he's going to be able to make good use of it. And Maokai could have taken it, but he hasn't shown any interest in it, and I don't want to leave it up for a long time. So I'm going to take the blue. The enemy team's threatening Baron. We obviously know they're not doing it because we can see Elise with this ward, and if they were doing Baron, Elise would be there. So right now we're just playing the Baron game with them, you know, stand around, hit some Qs. They notice that our Zed recalls, so they're going to start the Baron. And then me and Maokai are going to work to try to steal this. But they're going to have to back off because they think they can catch us. Before I keep talking about this Baron, I want to talk about my build. This is the exact same build that I showed in the item builds as the core. You get Warrior, Sightstone, and then Black Cleaver. Then you finish your Merc Treads. And finally, I have Deadman's Plate. Looking at the enemy team, Ahri's really fed, and Elise isn't doing bad. And Olaf and Misfortune are actually kind of weak. So you might think that this was a case where you needed to have Banshees first. However, I only have one death this whole game. I haven't been getting focused by Ahri, and I haven't been getting CC locked. All I've been doing is saving Vayne. So buying Deadman's in this case is going to give me a lot more mobility and a lot more chances to get to my Vayne to help her out. So you might think that because the enemy AP is fed, you want the magic resist item, but sometimes you just got to analyze the pace of the game and what you really need to do. So anyways, we're playing the Baron Dance with them. You know, this is what happens in pretty much every solo queue game. Once it's kind of even and somebody wants Baron, we're running back and forth, we're going in, we're leaving, Thresh Lanterns are saving people, stuff like that. What we should be doing right now is just pushing mid, because we can either force them to come fight us mid, or they're just going to do the Baron, and then we can come kill them once it's actually, you know, once they're devoted to it. Before, they've just been messing around with the Baron, you know, kind of hitting it once and leaving, but this time they did it till Baron was half health. So Baron's weakened them very significantly. So our team wants to come in and kill them because of that mistake they made. Here, I'm doing the normal, just hanging out with Vayne in the back. The Misfortune looks like she's going to escape, so I'm going to go ahead and ward hop to her. And then Ahri does escape, so that's no big deal. I go looking for Ahri because I don't want her to steal this somehow. I really don't mess around with steals in my solo queue games. So I go try to mess with her, see if she'll get off with the Baron. And she goes the long way around. We know she's not going to shoot anything over the wall. And here she hits the Vayne with a spell, but we know that her ult's down and she's all on cooldown after that. So we're all going to stand there trying to get the last hit, and Thresh actually perfectly times his hook for it, which was pretty funny. So now we have 3 people with Baron, which is a lot better than last time. However, we got minions swarming in our base on literally every lane. So what we have to do with this Baron now is push out the lanes as much as we can, and then really just focus on either of the inner turrets just to get that extra bonus gold and to help out our team a little bit more. So I'll go ahead and speed it up. All I'm going to be doing is clearing minions and buying. I think now I'm working towards a Banshee's Veil, yeah, because Ahri is fed, and also I can dodge maybe an Alistar combo or an Elise Cocoon or any one of those game-changing things if I have a Banshees. So here Alistar comes in. He's trying to tank a lot, and he does knock up a few people. However, Misfortune was mid, so they couldn't really capitalize on that. Also, our team is just pretty tanky. We had Maokai's ult going on, and we were strong enough to fend that off. Now, I'm going to be calling for my team to push bot because, as I said, and I've said it many times before, bot is the best lane to push while Baron is dead. If not for any other reason, just for the fact that you can't push bot while Baron is alive, so push it while Baron's dead. Now, Alistar comes in and he hits a very nice 4-man knockup on us. However, once again, it's this case of his team's not willing to follow up on him. I do have my Q on Alistar and he is pretty low, but if I went in on that Q, then I would have just died to their team. Our team manages to kill the turret, and then that means we're ready to team fight. So Maokai is going to jump in on the Olaf, and I'm just hanging around with Vayne. I'm looking to see if I can kill anyone, and then I noticed that Elise stands next to Misfortune, and that was a huge mistake on Elise's part. A lot of people don't think about that when you're versus Lee Sin, and probably a lot of Lee Sin players don't think about that either. You don't have to Insec or even just kick back the person that was hit by your Q, right? So I hit Elise with my Q here. We'll go ahead and speed it up a little bit. A little bit more goodness. Okay. I hit Elise with my Q, and then she, unknowingly, she's not even thinking about this, but she walks right next to Misfortune, and then that just means for me that I get a really easy ult back into my team on Misfortune. I could have played that better if I had ult flashed, like I showed earlier in the abilities, or if I had just ward hopped, but really at this point I want the game to end, and I don't even care that I'm going to die here. It doesn't matter. I just want the enemy team to die. So I kick in the Misfortune, and that's a huge part of their damage gone. Even though Misfortune wasn't doing that well, she still did do a lot of damage because Olaf's pretty tanky, Elise is pretty tanky. The tanky you are, the less damage you do, right? So Misfortune was a lot of damage. We kill her, and then Ahri's the next target. And then finally, Vayne almost gets a pentakill, but then Zed takes it with his W passive. He didn't mean to take it, but... No, Zed's E passive? Zed's real passive. Yeah, Zed's basic attacks against low targets deal a lot more damage, so he just accidentally autoed the Elise, and it did a lot more damage than anyone was expecting, and he steals the Penta. However, that's like the least important part of that fight, especially for this video. So what I did was, one thing that you need to note on Lee Sin is you can insect people even if you don't hit them with your Q. Another thing to note is that you are a bodyguard late game. That's Lee Sin's main role. He can do other things, especially if your team doesn't have like any engage whatsoever, then it might be you that needs to engage in all the matches, or I mean in all the team fights. But since our team had Thresh and the enemy team was willing to engage a lot with the Alistar, all I had to do was play bodyguard this game. Playing bodyguard is very easy. All you do is dash to your AD carry, kill whoever's in front of them. If you need to ult them away, you do that, so on and so forth. And then finally, the late game, I hit a sneaky ult on Misfortune to finish it all off, and then that's going to be GG. So, this is the last part of this guide. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really did enjoy making it. Lee Sin's always been one of my favorite champions just because of how awesome he is, and I hope he brings success to you guys too. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and if you want to subscribe to see more League of Legends jungle content, whether it's Lee Sin or any other champion, then please do that. Also, if you want to share this video with anyone that you know that plays Lee Sin but you don't think they're very good at it, show them this video and you can help them become really good at them. So once again, thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.